tweet on that. Let everybody know that we're live as I drop us with.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting coverage of the 2023 NFL Draft. We're recapping the 6th round for you this time around. Kyle, happy 6th round is almost over. Day 2.
Happy 2023 NFL Draft is almost over to you. I think that's the real storyline here is we are pushing into the final frontier of this 2023 NFL Draft. This coverage of the 2023 NFL Draft is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you think you can run an NFL franchise, visit ultimate-gm.com. Play the Ultimate NFL GM simulation experience. Start your dynasty today. Be curious to see which of these 6th round draft selections will end up being a dynasty builder for somebody, because it feels like there's one every year in this strike zone that moves the needle.
I don't know if you've ever heard this before, Kyle, but Tom Brady was a 6th round pick.
I had never heard anything about Tom Brady's selection range. So that's fascinating to me. What pick was he?
199. So this year's Tom Brady is, Kyle, the offensive tackle from Oregon. What's his name?
Maelesa Almave Lualu.
Yeah, there he is. So great career ahead for him.
Tuan, I'm glad you mentioned it. Cheers. The Dolphins got their tight end. Kevin, does Higgins really count as a tight end? He's every bit as much of a tight end as I promise you whatever. I know everybody wanted Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion. I'd rather have Higgins than Kuntz because Kuntz actually plays it. I think Higgins is a more physical player. I think he's got better ball skills. He's more athletic. He ran 4.45. 230 pounds. I think what's really interesting, and we obviously have a lot of ground to cover here in the 6th round, but this is only my 3rd draft pick, and it's the first one that I'm actually legitimately pounding the table excited for. So please regard me, Joe. Please regard me. I think what we're starting to see from Miami is I don't know how much of a 11, 12 personnel team this team is going to be. I think they're going to be 20, 21, 11. I don't think you're going to see a lot of the heavy formations for Miami. And, their inline guys in Saubert and Durham Smythe, they're kind of sufficient level NFL players. I think ideally they're both probably quality depth players, but you now all of a sudden have these body types of big physical wide receivers who are 230 plus pounds that can step down and block on the edge and do the Trent Sherfield stuff, but be significantly bigger than he is. I would not be surprised if there's an evolution of this offense that doesn't, based on what the Dolphins have told us and what they went after, to not be so much of an inline tight end heavy team. I think, and you think about Alabama when Tua was there and at his best, it was when they were there with Loxley and they ran 4 verts all the time and put all these wide receivers all over the field. Now you have to have a certain requisite level of offensive lineman to pull that off. And that's kind of the big mystery bag. But I think this guy will qualify as a tight end. I think he's a higher ceiling, and he's younger than Zach Kuntz by 2 years. So for all of the, Zach Kuntz, he's 2 years younger. And if you're going to convert him and make him be an NFL tight end in any capacity, you might as well go out and get a guy who's got a little bit more runway than what Zach Kuntz does. So I didn't scare off the entire chat.
Not yet. Good. No, we're good. I think you got your monologue in on Elijah Higgins, and I know that's a player that I'm sure a lot of people tuned in to hear about. So glad we were able to do that.
It's delicious.
Yes. All right, so we've got some other 6th round picks to reflect on. I'd like to start with a couple of potential very interesting slot corners that went early in the 6th round, and Keitrell Clark out of Arizona, for the Arizona Cardinals. From the Louisville Cardinals. We get a lot of these, right? We got JL Skinner, Broncos to Broncos.
Yep.
Clark is
Broncos to Broncos, Cardinals to Cardinals.
Yeah. The other one I was going to mention is not the same. It's a Horned Frog to a Ram. So Travius Hodgins Tomlinson.
There's jump there. There's no dots to connect.
No, there's no dots to connect. But both those guys, you think about them as sub-package players that can play in the slot that should probably be good special teams players. For Clark, a lot of production playing the football. For Hodges Tomlinson, I mean, you love everything about his tape at TCU except for that he's just really small in terms of height and length. But I think it's appropriate range for those types of players that I think, 6th round, you're thinking roster ability. Is there a role? What's the path? What's the vision? I think you can clearly see that with Clark and Hodges Tomlinson, a couple of teams in the NFC West.
So when I look across the 6th round, and first of all, thank goodness there's not half as many compensatory picks in the 6th round as there were in the 5th round. Felt like we added an entire extra half a round on the back end of the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
There's a stretch of picks here. JL Skinner, I'll go one further. Travis Hodges Tomlinson, who you mentioned, JL Skinner, Zaire Barnes is tucked in here, but then you get Parker Washington, Jaelyn Duncan, Kayshon Boutte, Tanner McAfee. You have this collection of players, Luke Whippler's after Oshwan Mathis, Trey Palmer. Like, if somebody told you they had these players on the fringe or just outside of a top 100 a couple months ago, would you have been surprised?
No. Yeah, they fell.
So, obviously slides for different reasons and teams have different motivations to not go after players, but these are players that all of those players have potential. And I think that's kind of a fun stretch of picks to look at and kind of cross-reference where we thought these players could be. The fact that they dip into this stratosphere. I mean, even if you go in front of Hodges Tomlinson, you got Keitrell Clark and Carl Brooks with 2 of the first 3 picks in the 6th round. And those were players that I know outlets across the space had as fringe top 100 players. And they all have, I think the common theme with most of them is there's some level of an individual question. With Carl Brooks, it's the fact that you have 31-inch arms as a 300-pound pass rusher, right? With Keitrell Clark, it's your size and stature. With Parker Washington, it's probably your long speed. I know he was a slot-only guy at Penn State for the most part. With JL Skinner, it's your weight mass distribution, and you're really lean and long and angular. With Jaelyn Duncan, it's kind of you plateaued for 2 years as a prospect and didn't grow and improve. For Kayshon Boutte, it's the entire saga of him being there and not being there. And didn't he go to transfer at one point and then changed his mind and came back? And then the whole saga with the coaches at the end of the season. It's like these are high potential players. And I think this is why you often see a player in this range of the draft who will go to the right spot and be in the right situation and become a successful NFL player. And I think if you were to point to this stretch of picks, I would be willing to bet there's 1 or 2 of these guys that become successful NFL players.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you went through a lot of the intriguing players there. If I were to laser in on something, I mean,
did you just yell at me for taking the whole thing?
I mean, you did. You went like, okay, there's like 8 really interesting picks. Let's just hammer them out here in this monologue.
Deuce Vaughn just got drafted, if that helps.
To the Cowboys, right?
Yes.
And he has his father is in the front office, if I'm not mistaken, in Dallas.
That's fun.
So we have a 5'5" running back
too.
Yeah. The Patriots have been feeling some type of way about their specialists here. It feels like drafting kickers and punters has been a thing for them. They go Bryce Behringer, the Michigan State punter. Didn't they draft a kicker already in this draft too?
Yes, they traded up for the Chad Ryland
from Maryland.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they hope they have their guys now at kicker and punter, where there's been a lot of turnover for them over the last few seasons. Not that that's super interesting, but certainly an observation that I'll make. Trey Palmer to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, wide receiver, Nebraska, was a big-time recruit that went to LSU. He runs 4.3, had over 1,000 yards last year for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. That's a pick that intrigues me quite a bit. I wanted him to pop more at the Senior Bowl, but there's something interesting about that speed with that production here at this point in the draft.
You were surprised a round ago he was still on the board.
Yeah. I thought he might be a 4th-round pick.
C-Fitz wants to know, is anybody surprised that no one has taken Andrew Voorhees yet? Probably not with the ACL injury, right?
Age and injuries.
Age and injuries. He had his doctors just wrote like all the teams a letter like recently, and it had to specify that they expected he was going to have a full recovery from the injury that he suffered. So I think from probably a incomplete evaluation in the medicals with the other stuff, non-premium position, age, the injuries, the income, like there's no clarity on the medicals. A lot of teams probably just took him off the board with too many questions. And he'll probably be a player that gets a nice signing bonus to sign as an undrafted free agent somewhere, unless somebody here in the final 50 picks or so goes out of their way to grab him. But I don't know that I'm necessarily surprised just because the medicals are as incomplete and unknown as they are.
About this Xavier Hutchinson pick for the Houston Texans at 205. They traded into this pick. They gave up 230 and their 6th-round pick next year to come to 205 to get Xavier Hutchinson, wide receiver out of Iowa State, who was very, very productive for them. And there's a lot to like about the way that Hutchinson plays the game. He's very physical, and I like how he competes for leverage at the catch point. Like he's not going to get cheated out of any opportunity to position that frame and get that leverage. I don't know that he's a great separator, but I think as a depth receiver, I mean, Bobby Slowick, Kyle Shanahan disciple, they value blocking, right? And I think you get that from Xavier Hutchinson. You know, maybe there's a little Trent Sherfield here to him, maybe. You could see the fit. Like I always like to see skill sets and then connect the dots with the team that they went to, and you feel like you're really vibing with them and you're seeing it. And I feel that way about this Xavier Hutchinson pick for the Houston Texans.
So I have a few observations for players as we're getting close to the end of the 6th round, and we have about 5 picks left: Arizona, Las Vegas, Washington, San Francisco, Cincinnati, as of right now, or at least off of the most recent web browser that I have. And there's been a lot of trades here, so if that's not the right order, it would not surprise me. A couple names that are still available I want to talk to you about, Joe. Sean Tucker. Surprise you?
He surprises me a little. I don't think he had the year he needed to have this past season. Obviously, he broke the Syracuse record for rushing yards coming out of 2021 in a single season. Very, very impressive. But the passing down upside is pretty poor. The receiving skill set's very underwhelming. The pass protection is very underwhelming. I know he's explosive and he runs hard, but does he have a lot of feel to him, right? Does he really run with nuance to widen gaps and make good decisions all the time? You know, I think that he's a high character guy. You know, you listen to Dino Babers talk about him. He raves about the guy. But I think there's a lot of questions here, but also there's enough physical skill here that you think somebody at some point would take this guy. But maybe there's just more limitations than makes sense for him to have come off the board.
Emil Ekiyor, Alabama.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Good starter for Alabama. I think him playing some center at the Senior Bowl was a good step for him. And we're talking late 6th round. We thought all the offensive linemen would go a little bit earlier than anticipated. He's certainly falling.
Brandon Joseph, Notre Dame.
Athletic restrictions, but the ball production, he's a smart, instinctive player. There's other safeties that I'm surprised went ahead of Brandon Joseph.
How about Eli Ricks?
Yeah, I mean, could the guy have had a worse season? I mean, really the last 2 years have just been really troubling for him and falling very quickly out of favor with Nick Saban, and they needed answers at corner, and Eli Ricks could not rise to the occasion.
Yeah, so this is all part of the strategy that's involved, right, with making decisions around your teams and creating a winning roster. And if you've ever dreamed of creating a winning roster of your own, our NFL draft coverage from 2023 is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of being a general manager, this is the mobile game for you. You have to give it a try. It puts you in charge of every strategic aspect of a franchise, from ticket sales to the facilities, to free agency, the salary cap, draft picks, injuries, you name it, all in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is also free and playable completely offline. So if you're on the go, don't have cell service, doesn't matter. You can pull it up on your phone and play whenever you want for as long as you want to, provided you have the battery life and you don't kill your phone spending too much time on the app, which I may or may not have done a few times in my career with Ultimate Football GM. Our listeners get 100% boost to their franchise when they put promo code locked on in the Game Store app. That is promo code Locked On in the Game Store app. You can find the app at ultimate-gm.com, or you can find it in the app stores. It is ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today, Joseph.
The Bills traded again. So for those of you who came in
no,
here,
they did not.
215, they traded it to the Los Angeles Rams.
Are they out of picks?
Well,
Are are they out of players on their board, or
maybe so. They had 215 and 230.
Oh, it's so annoying.
So yeah,
I keep waiting to be on with you making a pick tonight.
Yeah, I wonder if the Rams are at 223. I wonder if that's where they moved back from. Okay, so here's the trade. They go from 215 to 252, and they pick up a 6th-round pick in 2024. So now the Bills are up to 10 picks in next year's draft. So they got the 3 for Tremaine as a compensatory pick, and then they get the 6th-round pick from Houston, which I think will wind up being a pick around 180, and a 6th-round pick from the Rams, which I think will probably be around 180. So
feels like the Rams have been everywhere today.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to filter that. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's talk about
the Rams. Use the sheet
because it's for them. It's all about day 3, right? I mean, that's
right.
Where
they have to replenish with as much cheap talent as they can with how they approach this for so long. Well, they picked 36, 77, 89 in the top 100, and then it was 128. Today it was 128, 161, 174, 175, 177, 182, 189, 215, and they are still currently scheduled to pick 233 and 223.
That's the pick that went to Buffalo, so they no longer have 233.
Okay, but they still have 223. So they have this pick, and then they have one more. Still.
Yes. Yeah.
Steve Avila, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Stetson Bennett, they moved up for. Nick Hampton, Warren McClendon, Davis Allen, Puka Nacua, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, Oshua Mathis, and whoever they picked here at this spot.
They traded up for this player. Yeah. I just see roster ability, right? We've looked at this this Rams roster and have come quite concerned with what they have. And they just needed an influx of players, right? I mean, constantly. Shaq Evans is the pick.
Zach Evans,
running back, a very talented running back out of Ole Miss. Never quite lived up to his recruiting pedigree, but for the Rams, they've had to lean into just street free agents and UDFAs to fill out their roster. Not that they're getting a ton of premium picks here, but I think all of these players that you look at them and you say, okay, rosterable. And that matters for LA and where they're at in their life cycle as a football team.
Yeah, because they're going to take on a bunch of dead cap, right? They have dead cap for Jalen Ramsey. They potentially are looking at in the next year or two transitioning away from the Aaron Donald contract or the Matt Stafford contract. And if they do those things, there's a lot of dead money. So having these kinds of players, especially day 3 players that are going to be on your salary cap for 750, 800, 850, 900K, and having, I mean, with the picks that they've made, if single one of those guys makes the roster, that's 20% of your game day roster.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're not going to be super competitive this year, but like you kind of knew that anyway. So to have 20% of your roster that's taking up less than $1 million in cap space, and you have a 4-year window to kind of figure out who those guys are and who you want to commit to and who you need to reassess and readdress, it's the necessary evil of doing what the Rams did when they flew so close to the sun. Now they pulled it off. They got a Lombardi trophy, and that's great. But there's teams that do this, but then they don't fully commit to it like the Rams did, or they do fully commit to it, and they aren't fortunate enough to be a 4 seed and get hot and make a playoff run and meet another 4 seed and win in the Super Bowl. So it was mission accomplished, but this is the price you pay for the order of doing business the way that they did. D. Winters to the 49ers at 216. I was wondering if he was going to come off. He's a nice player.
Well, the Rams, they won the Super Bowl. If they didn't win the Super Bowl, there'd be a lot of criticism extended towards where they're at right now, because regardless, this was where they had to be.
Right. Whether they won in 2021 or not, this was kind of the window that they put themselves into when they decide. Although, I don't know, is that totally fair to say? Because if they didn't sign Bobby Wagner to the contract that they signed Bobby Wagner to, and they didn't sign Allen Robinson to the contract that they signed Allen Robinson to, could this have had a little bit better runway? Like, I know you can't control Andrew Whitworth retiring and all that kind of stuff, but
Well, let's assume they lost that Super Bowl to the Bengals. I still think that the same moves would have been made. Last year they tried to put it back together and try.
But that was after McVay and Donald came back.
Well, they came back this year. I mean,
yeah, but they also flirted with it after the Super Bowl. So they said, "Oh, we're getting everybody back.
Were they going to beat
let's
Philly?
Go win again."
Were they going to beat Philly?
No, they were going to. Brad Robbins punter Michigan to the Bengals.
Yeah, the kickers and punters are coming here in the 6th round. Good time to get those.
That's the last pick in the 6th round is a punter.
Bengals make an interesting pick. Andre Yosevis, the wide receiver from Princeton. The height, weight, speed, developmental curve there, but another interesting skill player that Cincinnati's added on day 3 with Charlie Jones as well as Chase Brown to go with Andre Yosevis. How
about Dante Stills coming off the board? You remember Dante Stills, his brother Darius, these undersized West Virginia defensive tackles? Goes to the Arizona Cardinals. Who was the Temple kid a few years back that they went out and got late in the draft?
Michael Dogby.
Yeah, how do you remember his name?
You and I have had very significant conversations about Michael Dogby, so I'll never forget him.
That's kind of who he reminds me of. So I think this is the right range. Really nice first step. Not the longest player. Not a very stout anchor. He's kind of the discount version of Tommy Adebawore as far as I'm concerned. So it's kind of a fun player for Arizona when you think about who they lost in Zach Allen leaving in free agency to go get a bag, and J.J. Watt leaving. And this could be a potential developmental type that could turn into a rotational type player for them.
So with all the quarterbacks that went in the 4th and 5th round, we get one in the 6th round, and it's Tanner McKee, who had some fanfare coming into the season. And he goes to the quarterback factory that is the Philadelphia Eagles.
When they lost Gardner Minshew.
They did. It's interesting to me because I think he's better than a lot of the quarterbacks that have come off the board, and I'm far from a Tanner McKee fan. I have a lot of concerns about him.
Well, you could say this too. I think there's some parallels with Stanford's offense and what Philadelphia wants to do too, right? I mean, this is a guy who's a really long passer within the pocket. He requires some space to work, but at the same time, he's running RPOs. He's athletic. He can move. I think that there's some nice overlap between Philadelphia and what they're aspiring to be and what he can provide as a contingency plan in the long term for a short period of time.
So the Eagles quarterback depth chart right now is Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, Ian Book, Tanner McKee. You feel like he could probably bump Ian Book off that roster.
I would think so.
And Marcus Mariota, it finally comes full circle, right? I feel like Marcus Mariota was an Eagle when Chip Kelly went there, but then he wasn't. So now he finally gets there. So it's a matter of time before that happens.
We had questions about quarterbacks. Do we think Eddie gets drafted? That was from Sue Ann. Sam asked who the best quarterbacks are that are available. Tyson Bagent, Lee Cunningham, Chase Bryce. Anybody else stand out to you?
No, I think those are probably the most notable name. Tim Demarat.
We had Duggan.
Oh, Max Duggan, yeah.
Duggan's probably the only other name that's notable.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking through the best available, and I don't see another name that's worth mentioning.
Joe, your thoughts on Gerard Clark for Buffalo? Your friend Kyle Krabs has told you to pass.
Yeah, that's going to be a no thanks. But at least he's a defensive lineman, and that would appease my appetite for a defensive lineman.
Okay. Final storylines here. Obviously, we're getting close to the end. We're coming into the 7th round. We're coming around the final stretch here, and we're coming around the final stretch of this live stream. At the end of the 6th round, we're formally into the 7th round. I believe we're at pick 219 is Antoine Green, wide receiver, North Carolina, to the Detroit Lions.
Okay. So we're in the 7th round. I mean, obviously, one of the traditions of you and I in drafts is that we both come into Mr. Irrelevant with a prediction for the selection. So when we get back in here for our final live stream, I would, obviously you and I are going to have our picks, but I hope that the chat will come with picks as well. Let's shoot our shot here.
Oh, you're challenging them.
Yeah, come in. We'll be here together, Mr. Irrelevant. See if we can predict it.
Okay, I know I've already got a name soft circled.
I had a quarterback soft circled for. I picked the quarterback last year for the 49ers. I just picked the wrong quarterback.
Right, shame on you.
Yeah,
mine's not a quarterback. Don't go that way.
A lot of ball game left, though. We got to see how
there is a lot of ball game left. We have about 40 picks.
Yeah.
30, less than 40 picks now. So she'll be coming around the mountain when she comes, right? Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino, Locked On NFL Scouting, the Locked On Network. It's your teams every day. Our 2023 NFL Draft coverage brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. We thank them for helping us bring this coverage to you all weekend long. The 7th round is upon us, so keep it locked in. Come on back and see us at the end of the 7th for our final live stream of the day, recapping the action from the 2023 NFL Draft.